Coaches, there's an explosion of neurodiversity amongst young people in our schools. Schools are really struggling to cope, and sports teams and clubs and schools are struggling to cope with that as well. Have you ever coached somebody who just does things a little bit different, who maybe has a slightly different way of thinking, and you've struggled to connect with that person? Well, in this episode of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast, we're going to dig deep from an experiential point of view into what is it like to coach somebody with autism or ADHD. How should you accommodate their needs? How do you spot somebody who's perhaps working a little bit differently to you? How can you avoid misinterpretations? This is a really practical episode. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Jay Runga. Jay is an executive coach. He's a coach developer. He works in gymnastics with coaches. And more importantly, he's the parent of a neurodiverse young person, as am I. So we're going to talk as two dads of neurodiverse young people and as two coaches who work practically on the ground to help the coaches out there understand some real life experience of what it's like to coach a young person who's neurodiverse. Jay, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Long time no see. Great to see you.
Yeah. I mean, we've known each other a long time, and it's funny when you have a neurodiverse child, you start to meet all the other parents and with neurodiverse kids. Oh, my kid's autistic as well. Oh, all right, okay, and you just realize that it's a network and it's a whole new world, and this is seems like just going through the roof now, these kind of diagnoses in schools. My daughter's 13, so girls are often diagnosed later than boys with autism. So this is something that's quite new to us. She takes part in dance. I'm a basketball coach. Tried to get her into basketball. She hated it. Now I know why. So tell me about your experience and what do you think is, some of the issues that coaches are facing when they're coaching neurodiverse young people?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work in gymnastics. Well, we started literally in the last couple of years to do a lot of work in educating coaches and neurodiversity. What does it mean? Because like you've said, feels like it's just exploded in the last few years. And as a old school neurotypical person, dad, coach, it feels like it's just hit me in the face as well. And like you've just said in your intro, my son, we've just realized, is also autistic. He's 10 years old, and like you have tried to really push him in towards team sports because it's good for your physical, it's good for your social, it's good for your emotional intelligence, right? To work, to understand, to work with people and stuff. Just didn't get it. I mean, dad, it's not for me. But somehow he was really, really drawn to gymnastics. So that got me really curious about, the world of gymnastics and why we tend to get quite a lot of people that are attracted to the sport. And we did a bit of work with Alice Beveridge, who's an expert on, she's a psychologist and an expert on neurodiversity, teacher. She's a coach as well, so she totally gets it. And we started to get real curious working with coaches around what the barriers were, what the challenges around working with kids who are neurodiverse, ADHD, autism, and all the other neurodiverse conditions that you have. And we started to kind of really quickly understand, and it was just a lack of education, lack of understanding of what they really mean. So then we started to have to kind of educate and kind of raise awareness amongst the coaches themselves to try and start to create the environment whereby those activities were taking place, to try and change the environments of the participants, change the experience a little bit. But it all comes down to understanding, people who are coming through to the door and what challenges they have, what's different about them, what suits them better. What actually are their conditions and it's about working with them and not treating everybody the same. That doesn't really work. But I think it starts with coaches understanding a little bit more about the sort of neurodiversity landscape type thing.
Yeah. So my daughter is a dancer, loves dancing, seems to like the movement, something about the movement in space, loves being in water. doesn't like swimming per se, but loves going swimming, jumping in the water,
Mm,
just floating about. She can spend hours in there just in her own world as well sometimes if she's
mm,
on her own. Whenever we go on holiday in the summer, got to have a swimming pool, and she's in there 3 times a day. She just loves, just like
yeah,
kids. And when she was young, we just thought she's a kid who loves jumping in the pool. I mean, who doesn't love jumping in the pool?
yeah,
And then as she's got older, she's like, no, actually, there's something about the weightlessness, something about the sensory feeling of the water. And with dancing, it's about moving your body in space. And I wonder if that's similar in
mm,
gymnastics as well, with dance-like movements. But then contrast that to team sport, where I've coached teenagers who are neurodiverse, and the rejection sensitivity, like,
mm,
really kind of kicks in. Like, it can be really, really hard. And I know that's why my daughter can't play team sport. The
mm,
prospect of being judged, evaluated, the ball went in the basket or it didn't. Like, it's
mm,
quite sort of yes or no. It's quite obvious whether you're good or not
yeah,
at a team sport. And because you have to relate to others, all the things that you and I would say as positives about team sport, for a neurodiverse person, they can be the exact things that they just don't want to be a part of, can't be a part
yeah.
of.
I think you've generally hit the nail on the head. I've got the same experience with my son. I think what really attracts him to gymnastics is the the control that he can have. Like, it's all down to him. Like, he controls his training. He knows the scores that he needs to hit. He's actually worked out in his mind already all his other like little guys in his training group, what scores they can do with the skills that they're gonna. And he's worked out all the kind of numbers. It's quite a numbers sport as well, like, because
Yeah.
you need to be able to kind of achieve certain skills to get the scores type thing. So he's worked all of that, and that essentially becomes his training plan. But as you put him in it, and because he's in control of that, and he knows he doesn't need to
Yeah.
talk to anybody else. He just needs to listen to his coach, and it's between him and his coach. I've tried him in an environment of hockey, rugby, basketball. It's just too much going on, like in terms of like sensory, like there's that social dynamics you kind of have to have. You've just said about your daughter, you have to rely on others. It's not just you. You've got to rely on others doing well, or others picking you up, or you've got to pick others up, and you go to work as a team. He really, really struggles with that. It's just too much for him emotionally. And I think the kind of noise as well in the basketball hall, and rugby coaches shouting all the time. Gymnastics is quiet. If you've don't know if you've ever been to a gymnastics competition, but when the gymnasts are about to execute their skills, it goes quiet, and you
Yeah.
occasionally hear like, "Come on, Ollie, come on this and come on that," but it's very quiet, and I think that really just suits him to a T. So you've learned to accept it, and hopefully he can find. We're trying to work with him to understand how his brain works. And listen, we're no experts, my wife and I. We're just trying to understand that ourselves. But we're trying to
Yeah, me
teach him
too.
how to listen to his own thoughts and be aware, and be aware of himself and his environment and his emotions, and try to kind of create an environment for himself that's going to allow him to thrive as a person, if that makes sense. And not,
Yeah.
like you say, not feeling ashamed to be who
Mm,
you are. I think
mm.
that's really, really important.
Yeah. Well, I think if I take the example of autism, there can be some real strengths that somebody could bring to any sport, including a team sport, if that team sport can be accommodating of some of their
Mm,
needs, if the coach can be sensitive to it. A lot of it is just about that sensitivity to somebody's needs, which is just needs-based coaching. Like, if you're
mm,
good at that, you're going to be good at coaching any sort of people of any sort of spiciness. You're going to be able to support them if you're able to
mm,
identify somebody's needs, communicate with them in such a way that perhaps draws those needs out, builds on their self-awareness of their own needs, and then their ability to articulate it back to you, like the use of open questions and active listening. That can help you to understand that person's needs, regardless of, you don't need a diagnosis, and you don't always need to ask somebody, hey, are you, have you got ADHD? Like,
yeah,
I mean, that might be quite intimidating, quite embarrassing for that person. So you
yeah,
can't, unless they disclose it to me as a coach. First of all, I'm not about to go ask them, but I might think, there's a little something there, there's a little spiciness there. So I'll pick my spots of when to communicate with them. If they go
yeah,
off on a little bit of a tangent, I'll let them do that. Especially with ADHD, if they're starting to get starting to get upset or maybe overstimulated. Like, if I'm a basketball coach, I might take them out of the game. I just happen to sub them at that moment, may or may not need to acknowledge it or say anything to them. Just looking for those signs, taking them out of that environment for a little rest at some point, trying to help them avoid pressure situations if I can. But they can still offer a lot. So strategy, for example, I mean, some autistic brains are just brilliant with strategy. So if you want game plans for a soccer team, lacrosse team, basketball team, you want game plans, you might have that really smart sort of backup point guard or something on your team who's a bit quieter than everyone else, but they might actually really know what's going on.
Yeah. And statistics as well, like understanding stats, where stats play a key element into winning or losing. That's that. Do you know what came to mind then? Actually, it's like I'm watching The Last Dance again.
Oh yeah,
I was
brilliant.
watching the episode last night where Dennis Rodman calls a meeting with Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson calls a meeting with Michael Jordan, with the two of them together, the three of them together, and he says to Michael Jordan, Dennis needs to talk to you. And Dennis Rodman says to Mike, you go in the room, and Phil Jackson says to Michael Jordan, Dennis has got something to say to you. And Michael goes, he knows it's not going to be a good thing, because he knows when Dennis calls in for a meeting, it's going to be bad. And Dennis says, I've got to go to Vegas. Like, I need to go to Vegas. I need to go and just, let off some steam. And they let him go. They let him go to Vegas for 3 days. Like, do you remember that episode?
Yeah.
My take on this, right? Now that we're just speaking about this, like, because this episode is just fresh in my mind. I don't know if Phil Jackson knew at the time that Dennis was neurodiverse. Like, I believe he is. Like, if you look at, how he's conducted himself over the years and all that kind of stuff. I think something you said there about Phil Jackson really understanding the particular needs that, Dennis Rodman needed in this moment of time. He needed to just go away from the team and just completely switch off and be away from that environment. And he knew that he would come back a better player, and he did. He came back a much better player after that, and they went on to win and contributed massively. And if you look at the people that he put around Dennis Rodman as well to support him as an individual, as a person, big character leadership, who really understanding people like Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and all these guys, Steve Kerr, they just really understood him as a person and let him do things that were outside the rules for everyone, and nobody else would have got away with that. He just had these specific needs, and I just kind of wonder, was he maybe autistic or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great example, because you're right. He came back from Vegas and absolutely kicked ass from that point onwards. And somebody like Steve Kerr on that team, in order for him to play his best, he didn't need to go to Vegas for 3 days. He needed to do the opposite. You can get in the gym or whatever, or he was such a professional that you could imagine a coach thinking, why aren't you more like Steve Kerr? Why aren't you more like this kind of predictable professional who behaves in a way that I can understand? But you're absolutely right. To Phil Jackson's credit, he recognized something unique about Dennis Rodman, that he needed. The pressure was building up. There was something that needed released, and once he went and released that, he just went on a tear. And that describes my daughter and the cleanliness of her bedroom. Like, it'll go like weeks, and you're just like, how can we live like this? But she'll say this is the ADHD. When the ADHD is driving the bus for her, it's I can't put these things away, or I actually know where everything is, so don't touch it, because it might not look like it, but I know where everything is. And then one night, literally, usually around 10 p.m. when I'm trying to go to bed, the autism will kick in, and she'll tidy your room, and it'll be like you've never seen it before, and you're just like, where did that come from? And so it's the mix of those two things is really challenging, really challenging to coach, because the different spiciness can be driving the bus at different times. So dealing with that, like as a parent, that's one of the most difficult things. But as a coach, just imagine somebody who sort of loses their emotions at short notice over seemingly nothing. And And you think, what? Why are you behaving like? Why are you being
Yeah.
like? Why? Why are you doing? What are you playing at? And you can
Yeah.
just, I can imagine myself in my previous younger years as a coach responding in that way to some of those random behaviors. Whereas now, to borrow your word, I'd be curious. I'd be like, oh, where did that come from? That's some kind of distressed behavior. That's not challenging behavior. That's distressed behavior. Okay, I need to back off here rather than step forward. I actually need to step back, give that person that space, and then wait for the time to, come in with some questions, perhaps.
Yeah. I bet you it's changed you as a coach, knowing that you've, dealt as a dad experience with your daughter. I just kind of wonder how much has actually shaped you, your coaching philosophy, how you
Mm,
coach, your self-awareness as a coach, like how you
mm,
you notice your own judgment when you notice like certain behaviors
yeah,
from your own players, and how you deal with it. I bet is now different because of the experience that you've had to deal with your daughter who's
yeah,
autistic and ADHD.
yeah. 100%. As I get older, the more I coach, the less I coach.
Mm,
If you watch me 10 years ago at a game or a practice, and then you watch me now, you'd be thinking like, you, sometimes it looks like you're not doing anything.
yeah.
Before I would have been up, I would have been involved in every activity. I would have been talking people through it. There would have been a lot of
Mm,
cross talk, which is just really hard for somebody with ADHD that's got like six different radio stations going on in their brain.
mm,
That's an old reference for the younger listeners. Six Spotify playlists going on at the same time in their brain.
yeah.
And then I add a seventh, which is like go left, go right, shoot it, pass it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just making that person even more confused. So
Yeah.
I observe a lot more than I used to. I talk less, and I try to be clearer when I do talk. And I respond to what appears to be challenging behavior much different. And
Mm,
that's frustrating particularly for neurotypical people. That can be frustrating if you see your coach observing this behavior, that player, that neurotypical person's perceiving it as disruptive behavior, but me, the coach, is taking a step back and observing it, and sort of it can appear that I'm allowing it to happen.
mm,
So what I find is it's challenging to coach somebody or be a parent of somebody with neurodiversity. It's also really challenging to coach or be a parent of someone who's neurotypical, who's adjacent to the neurodiverse person and is affected by their ups and downs.
yeah. Absolutely. And I think that as a neurotypical person, like you've definitely like triggered something in me that is so true. And like the judgment, I'm going to be honest and vulnerable and say I've judged my son so many
Yeah.
times
Yeah, me too.
in his behavior. And I've judged similar to you, like coaching the girls, the basketball team a couple of years ago. I judged so many behaviors that I thought, that's completely out of character or not in line with the values and the culture that we're trying to build within this team and stuff. What I've learned as well through doing this work with Alice is the first thing comes self-awareness. Like, be aware of your own emotions and really work hard to understand when you're judging. And when you do, when you get to that stage when you recognize that you're judging somebody, is trying to replace judgment with curiosity.
Yeah.
And if you and it takes practice. It doesn't happen
It
overnight.
takes a lot of
It
practice.
takes a lot of practice, and I'm still practicing.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, still
Yeah.
practicing. Like this morning, I shouted at my son because I jumped to judgment and I reacted straight away, and then I reflected back and went, right, okay, hated myself, felt guilty, right, learning time. What am I going to learn from this? And later when I meet him, I'm going to have to say, like, listen, apologize for this morning. I didn't mean to react that way, and let's work back from it, type thing. But yeah, there's something in there around self-awareness and replacing judgment with curiosity. And I love what you're talking about around just stepping back and observing. Because I think what you do notice quite a lot is like when you notice a pattern of behavior, and when it becomes a pattern, that's when you understand, no, actually that's about personality, that's about something that they're kind of normally programmed with. So what I need to do there is actually just listen more and ask questions and seek to really understand that person, how they deal with things, and ask questions around like how do you want me to coach you? Like, this
Yeah.
is a coaching relationship, and what works for you, and what can I do differently as a coach to really help you thrive or help you deal with these situations? Like, what do you want me to do? And they'll tell you, if you've got that relationship as a coach, or as a parent, or as an employer or whatever, they'll tell you, that works for me. That, see, when you do this, that doesn't work for me. And you kind of learn to kind of build that understanding, mutual understanding of each other. I think that's really important.
I tell you another skill that it's really taught me, and that's how to repair. Like you just mentioned there, spoke to your son this morning in a way that in hindsight, you didn't want to do that. It's hard to be intentional all the time because it's exhausting, man. You have to concentrate. You have to concentrate so much. You can't really let go because you know that one moment of judgment can actually derail that young person for at least the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So that ability to repair, to actually come back later, explain to a person, I think I might have got that wrong, or this is how I was feeling at that moment, and so I responded in this way. And actually, my behavior is about me, not about you. And if that situation happens again, here's how I want to respond. And if I don't respond like that in a situation, it's okay to tell me that. Like, you've got my permission to tell me that if I'm not or I'm not communicating in the way that I want to.
Yeah.
That ability, that conversation to repair with another person, that I find that really hard. I mean, that must be one of the hardest emotional skills we'll ever learn in our lives.
Yeah.
And so being a parent of somebody neurodiverse has helped me develop that skill, helped me come back from those kind of situations, and then taking that into my coaching of anybody. Like, I'm better now than I used to be of just acknowledging one-to-one with somebody, like, I got that wrong, or even agreeing to disagree, but here's how I viewed it. So in the past, I would have let small breaks, small ruptures just happen. Particularly, I used to coach men, and if it's a stereotype that you can just sort of fist bump that guy the next time you see, are we good? Yeah, we're good. And you've not, like, that's not repairing.
We've not really addressed the situation here.
That's mutual. I don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it. Right. So we both don't want to talk about it. Yeah, good. Fist bump. That's kind of what you're saying. Yeah. Let's try to forget it. That's not repairing. That's just blokes trying to move on because they're trying to ease their discomfort. That ability to repair. I wonder what you think of that concept.
I think it's harder when there's power dynamics at play. It's you've just given the example of, like, probably for somebody like you who's really, really self-aware, or you sound like you do a lot of work on yourself and being emotionally and socially aware and your needs and others' needs, and creating an environment where you thrive as a coach or a parent, but also your athletes thrive. There's something in there around the power dynamics. I think when you're working with younger people, you're supposed to be the adult. You're supposed to be the kind of person who knows everything and tells them how they should be and all the rest of it. And they're looking to us as, for guidance, for instructions. And when we're trying to actually build that rapport with them, it takes a bit like that sort of understanding each other. And that's really complex, I think. Really, really complex, especially when you're dealing with, like, diverse kids. And for me, as a neurotypical person, I find that really, really challenging, if I'm being honest. Really challenging, one that I'm still practicing with. But I think that, there's something in there around the sort of power dynamics, especially in the sport of gymnastics, and in the role of a parent to a child, where you're supposed to hold all the answers. Like, you're supposed to be the one who keeps them safe. So they're always looking to you for things. So it's changing from the sort of like tell to, well, what do you think? I'm not going to tell you how you should behave. Like, what do you think? And that starts to kind of open up like a complete different sort of like dynamics of relationship, because you're all of a sudden listening and involving them in the planning. And that takes, I think, a lot of vulnerability and self-awareness from the person who's supposedly in the kind of higher power in that dynamic. And then two, real, like, checking your your sort of like own ego a little bit and judgment and sort of admitting when you're wrong. But I think, yeah, there's something in there around the power dynamics completely messes that
Yeah.
process up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're talking about being a neurotypical person as a coach, coaching a neurodiverse young person. But I wonder if there's coaches listening to this who have had the thought that they might be neurodiverse
Mm.
and starting to reflect on how that affects their coaching, because that applies to me. I think I'm neurospicy in some way. I don't
Would you think? Would you think you are? Like, what spectrum are you on?
well, put it this way. My dad has been building the same model railway in his garage for 5 decades. Like, if that's not an autistic special interest, I don't know what is. Like, and has very little friends, and like just really had a lot of difficulty with relationships, and quite black and white. So his generation often weren't diagnosed. So I don't want to be a psychologist and diagnose my own dad, but I mean, from what I know, that's pretty spicy in lots of ways. And my mum was all over the place. I mean, she was amazing lots of times, and other times just crazy. And that feels, in hindsight, feels quite ADHD-ish. So I've got some flavors in there. I don't particularly feel the need to. I don't need to go, pay thousands of dollars for an assessment, or wait 3 years on a waiting list or something, because it's just a curiosity. Like, I don't need a piece of paper or a certificate for this. But when I look back, I'm like, why am I attracted to coaching? Particularly if I've got some autistic tendencies, why am I attracted to coaching when it's all about people? And I've found, like, peopling just exhausts me. Like, I enjoyed this conversation, but I couldn't have more of these. I couldn't have 2 of these in a day. Really, I'd be exhausted. Coaching really exhausts me. I find myself disappearing into my own world a little bit when I'm coaching, especially if I don't have an assistant coach. I find it difficult to start conversations with players sometimes, which is why I mentioned earlier the skill of repairing. Like, I found that so hard, because that's a really difficult conversation to initiate. And sometimes I find conversations hard to initiate about, like, the weather, let alone repairing. I love strategy. Like, that's why I think I was largely attracted to coaching, the chessboard kind of nature of coaching basketball, and all the interventions that you can have, and changing tactics and midway through a game and all of that. I love that. I'm quite good at that. So there's a soup going on here. So I'm definitely looking back on some of my coaching and think, yeah, there was something stopping me in that situation. And I wonder if there's coaches listening where, well, why do I keep repeating some of the same mistakes, or what? They might not be mistakes, but why do I keep getting back into these same situations, recurring situations with players where I maybe have a bit of trouble connecting with them, or why do I feel so burnt out after coaching a practice or a game? Why do I need to lie on the couch, or feel like I need to lie on the couch for an hour after I've coached a game? And that's what I mean, I used to literally coach a game and come home and just zonk out on the couch for an hour. And I needed that to recover. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, it's fine. You know, something that comes to mind, the book I would recommend just on that topic is one of the best books I read last year, Surrounded by Idiots. And it's a book around...
I like it already.
It's so funny, I know. It's so funny. And it's a book about insights, personality. And I know there's so many personality tests out there, but this is the one that I've come across that I feel really is based on psychologist Carl Jung's theory of, he's categorized personalities into 4. So there's the blue, which is the introvert, task-driven person. And on the opposite, you've kind of just described that you're potentially on that blue spectrum. I'm the complete opposite of that. I'm yellow. I'm people focused, people engage. I'll find it easy to, engage with somebody in a train, a conversation, and we'll be best mates after 10 minutes and exchange phone numbers and stuff like that. When I come back from practice, I am energized because I've been surrounded by people. So I'm like very much an extrovert. Don't have attention to detail at all. I'll get my ass kicked and chess if I play you,
Yeah.
because you'll have the patience. Whereas I'm more around like, taking people on a journey with me. So I'm more people focused. And then the reds are more around, they'll just kind of force their way for everything. They're people focused, but they are more around like, like what's the sort of task that we need to do. Like they'll not worry about people's emotions and feelings. They tend to be kind of CEOs and leaders and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got the green on the other side of that, who are the peacemakers. I'm not going to go into too much detail of the book, but it's really, really interesting. And I would recommend, if you're thinking, and if you're in that stage in your career or in your coaching career as a parent, where do I fit within all of that? And what energizes me? This book is absolutely gold. It will really help you, and it's got like a questionnaire at the end as well that helps you identify, what drains you and what energizes you, and where are the things. And you've got things that you can turn on as well, and there are things that are just inbuilt in you. So yeah, really, really interesting.
Great. Well, that sounds like a brilliant coaching book. I mean, there isn't an experienced coach alive who in their worst moments wouldn't admit to having that feeling. Oh my God, I'm surrounded by idiots. So that alone is the cover is worth it.
Yeah.
Just by itself. Listen, Jay, let's wrap this up, because we always try to keep these conversations around the half-hour mark, because coaches are busy. They got things to get on with. First, let me say in closing that this has been a great conversation. This kind of conversation doesn't happen enough in coaching worlds, where people are really reflecting on their own styles. In my experience, a lot of coaches want to have these kind of conversations, but there aren't always the kind of spaces for them to happen. And I bet there's a lot of coaches out there curious and wondering and a bit confused about how to coach a young person who behaves a little bit differently and sometimes seemingly quite sort of irrationally. And hopefully we can spark some conversations here. So thanks very much for joining me.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Well, listen, in the show notes, we'll put your LinkedIn profile in there, and any other contact details you want to leave us. So coaches that are listening, feel free, just get either of us on LinkedIn, find us on Instagram, whatever you want to do. If you know us already, send us a DM or feel free to connect, because we'd love to spark some conversations. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment. As we said at the beginning, we're not experts. We're just two coaches and dads with some lived experience in this space. So if there's any tips anybody wants to offer us, any comments they want to make, or messages they want to send us, please feel free to get in touch, because we'd love to have more of these types of conversations. So thanks again, Jay.
Cheers, Simon.